For as long as I can remember, I have been in love with stories. Legends, folklore, and tales of magic and mystery always brought me a sense of wonder and soon became my favorites. Those types of stories always made the world more magical, and life just seemed more fun that way. So today's painting is inspired by the folklore of the Kelpie. Now, before I could even start on this painting, I did want to do a smidge of research and kind of get a little bit more sense as to what they actually look like before I start painting this piece. So a Kelpie is basically a shape-shifting aquatic spirit of Scottish legend, and they're said to haunt rivers and streams and usually take the shape of a horse. But of course, they are not as sweet as they look to be. They are particularly attractive to children, and they have this sticky hide, and once the child is stuck to their back, they basically take the child and take it to the river and drown them and eat them. They can also take different forms, and they can appear as beautiful young women to lure men to their death, kind of thing. A little bit of a siren thing going on. So it has a bunch of forms that I could have chose to paint, but I chose to go with the horse version and try to kind of make it look a little malevolent and kind of evil looking with the gray eyes, and kind of try to get that sticky, glittery horse feel to it. And this way I could use some references, because there's obviously references of horses on the internet that I can look at. I would like to revisit this one day and maybe perhaps add an underwater scene where the actual Kelpie is in its original form. I really do wish there was some kind of like cryptid folklore zoo that I could visit and just kind of like go study and do actual drawing from life from this. But unfortunately, there's just a bunch of, other artists' works that you can look at, and without trying to be a copier, so a lot of this is just kind of like going with my imagination and references that I have access to. So for this piece, I did decide that I wanted to try to paint with watercolor on top of coffee dyed paper, which you would have saw me do at the beginning of the video. And I am happy to report that I am very excited for how this came out, because I feel like the indigo on this piece came out so much bluer than I expected, which was really exciting for me, because I just assumed that the coffee would kind of take up the space in the watercolor paper, and it wouldn't have like enough room to absorb the watercolor paint, which wasn't the case. So I was really happy with that end result, and I do really like how this kind of looks like something that you would see in like an old folklore book, like an old grimoire, or something that, was like way back in the 1700s, like an old book that just kind of like categorized all of the folklore creatures. I feel like this is going to be something that inspires a end term project with all of these pieces put together somehow. I think that could be really, really neat. Another element of this piece that I find to be really, really fun was the fact that I used matte black ink with the watercolor as well. And I feel like the ink just looks so cool mixed in with the watercolor, because I was able to get the Kelpie to essentially look kind of glittery and sticky towards the end, and I'm really, really happy with how that came out. It was kind of an issue to layer this, because I started kind of like, you can go darker, but you can't really go lighter with ink. So I started really light. So I did have to kind of put a few layers on this and keep like going back and re-adding shadows. So next time I think I'll go in a smidge darker. But to be fair, in my defense, it does look really dark when you apply it, and then it dries a lot lighter, kind of like wash. So I thought that was really interesting, and I did have to keep reworking some areas, but I do feel like the fact that I had to layer it so much, it gave it a lot of dimension, which I wasn't really expecting. And I do, not to tune my own horn or anything, like I don't like to be like that, but I'm usually very critical of my work. So when I have things that I like about my work, I feel like it's good to tell yourself about those also, just because, you know, I mean, good self-talk is good for you. So another element that I really like about this piece is kind of like the frame that it's in with the water coming out. And it just, it does feel very, very storybook to me. And I feel like that's kind of like an unintentional way of like where I'm going with my art. Like a just very like a real imaginative realism, if that makes sense. Like I'm still, I feel like 3 years behind from my work, from what I wanted to complete in my head. Like I would really like to make some really realistic images of things that don't exist. And like with dragons, it might seem a smidge easier, and you know, because there's a lot of references in TV shows and stuff. Like you have this like you know, visual of what a dragon looks like, but stuff like, you know, like the Kelpie and like some of the not known as much folklore creatures, like all you really have to base it on is some other artist's imagination. So like trying to kind of like realistically make a creature of imagination is very challenging for me. So I have been studying a lot lately. I've been studying like textures and skins and scales, and like, because if you want to paint a dragon, you're going to have to learn how to paint scales. And then like the wings, obviously you would have to study wings, reptiles, you know, all kinds of things. So I am in study mode so I can eventually reach that realistic painting that I want to make of creatures that, you know, quote unquote don't exist. Yeah, so I feel like this is a very, very good step forward towards that, even though I do have some like cutesy styles that I kind of like to do, like the Loch Ness monster that I painted, and it was kind of cutesy in a fishbowl. I do like that style as well, but I do feel like I need to challenge myself to get a little bit out of my comfort zone, because if I'm not progressing in a way that I want to progress. Like I always like to feel like I'm improving, especially because I spend so much time doing art. So I would like to always continue to learn and grow and have more than one style that I work in, which is always really exciting. Okay, back to the piece here, because all the good bits are starting to happen and all the details are coming in at this stage. And originally, when I had outlined the frame to this, I had outlined it in gold ink, and I just really did not like the way it turned out. So I decided to take a black charcoal pencil and kind of feather the frame out a smidge, and I am really happy with how this came out towards the end. So much so that I ended up doing this multiple times, even though I didn't show it all to you guys, just because I didn't want you to get bored with me doing it over and over again. But I did kind of go over the frame part of this piece, I want to say 3 times, and then I would take my smudge stick and then smudge it out, and then eventually I added extra smudges around it. And I just feel, I don't even know how to explain how this feels, but this feels so storybook to me that I am just so happy with the end result that I couldn't really fathom what was happening, because something that started off as an accident because I experimented with gold ink and it didn't turn out right, and just the ability to have the state of mind to kind of be like, okay, how am I going to fix this? And then to come up with an idea that's actually way better than you thought it was going to be originally is so satisfying, and so like a sign of growth, I feel like, as an artist, because I feel like maybe 4 years ago I probably would have trashed it and started over because I didn't know what to do with it. So I think that's really, really exciting to kind of just have that step and just keep going with something until you're happy with it, because you never know what might happen towards the end. I also wanted to take a quick second to let you guys know that I have a free wallpaper available if you have not gotten the new one yet. And also, almost everything in my shop is 20% off with the exception of the Magical Shit zines and the limited edition fine art prints. This print here, the Will-O-the-Wisp art print and the Cottagecore Froggo print will be going away next Sunday, May 12th. So if you wanted to get your hands on that, now is the time to do so. Partly because they're 20% off and they're just going away. I need to make more room for new art prints and new things in my shop. I have a bunch of things coming that I have been working on forever and I'm super excited about them all. Anyway, here are the close-ups of my Kelpie painting. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in the next one.